What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Sitting with Sean, episode number 35. You're the big 3-5 today, Tara.
Sweet.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So today's guest, I have Terra Carbert, and she is from Minnesota.
I am from Minnesota. I see like on the little top of the screen that it says where I am. That's kind of creepy.
Facebook. It does wonders. I like to put where people are from. Just simple fact of like to show like that addiction and mental health disorders aren't secluded to one area, or one group of people.
Yeah, they're sure not. And I'm so for those who don't know where St. Louis Park, Minnesota is, just right outside of Minneapolis.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. So, Tara, would you like to give a formal introduction of yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Terra Carbert. I introduce myself at least once a week as a recovering compulsive gambler. Sean and I met, where did we meet? Some Facebook community. Something. Figured out we're both talking about recovery, care about recovery, want to spread a little experience, strength, and hope around the world. And I also host a podcast called Ambitious Addicts, where I feature women in recovery from all addictions and all pathways to recovery to do the same thing as Sean. So figure a couple of like minds wanting to spread some good words out there. Might as well get together and do it. Thanks for sitting with me today.
No, thank you for sitting with me, and thank you for hanging out with me. The way I got my name is kind of crazy, but this is a story for another time. All right. So what is the weather like in Minnesota today?
Presently snowing and cold.
Oh, man.
Enough to shovel today.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. How about Anchorage?
Ooh, it's cold. It's really cold. It was in the negatives this morning. And we have a little bit of snow on the ground, but not much.
Okay, a little cooler there than here. We're hovering right around 30, where the snow just piles.
Yeah, we're waiting for that first real bad dump to come on us. We've gotten sporadic snowfalls here and there, but nothing mad crazy.
Yeah, good news is we know we're gonna have a white Christmas. There's no way this is melting before then.
Yeah, we might have a dirty Christmas this year.
Like slushy.
Yeah, pretty much. So, Tara, let's get into it. What was it like in your active addiction or your behavior of choice?
Yeah, so I think, looking back on it now, I can say like I was addicted to self-destructive behavior. Like the thing that brought me to my knees and seeking help and seeking recovery was gambling. But all throughout my childhood, my 20s, 30s, there were those on again, off again relationships with alcohol, people, substances. There was always something I was relying on. Gambling ultimately became the thing that created all the unmanageability in my life, where I was sacrificing, my personal health, my family health, and everything that I had spent my whole career building, putting that all on the line just to get that next bet, whether it was a game of cards, pull tabs, slots, it didn't matter, like anything to get that next bet. And I had not gotten that way with drugs or alcohol before. I think I did a little dance with cocaine for a while in my 20s that could have become worse than it did, but that pattern was interrupted. So there's a lot of interrupting the disease of addiction in my life until, there wasn't an interruption, and gambling was just the thing that didn't get interrupted. And it ended with me having serious thoughts of suicide and not having a plan, but having flashes of if I was to make that decision, how I might. And being a person whose father died by suicide, thankfully that scared me enough to raise my hand and say, whew, I need help. Like I don't want to do to my child. I don't want to leave my child behind wondering all the things I wonder about why my dad made that choice.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided to get help.
Right. I know I've had some guests on my show that aren't like the traditional people that deal with traditional what you would think of as an addict or an alcoholic, right? So I've had people that were addicted to sex. I've had people that were
Yep.
addicted to other substances that are FDA approved. What was it about gambling that was like, I have to have more of it?
I think there was a few different things. And I want to do a sound check quick. Are you getting an echo on your end? Because I
No,
am. Okay. And I can live with it. I just want to make sure it's not
no,
messing
you're
with
good.
you. Okay. Um, I would say probably just like any other addiction, it was, numbing. Like I didn't have to feel the feelings that I didn't want to feel. And so I was able to escape from emotions I didn't want to have. The other unique thing about gambling is that it also, I guess it's not just gambling, there's plenty of drugs that do this too. You also get this like, woo, if you win. And it doesn't even matter like if it's a single hand, like the rush that comes from a single hand of blackjack can endure like the hope of the next win through a ton of losing. And the same thing with slot machines, or there's a ton of psychological research now on slot machines of like even a near miss triggers this same dopamine rush that a win does. And
Yeah.
so I think that cycle of like excitement and creating these really good positive emotions in the short term made me want to go back for more of that in addition to kind of the trance like state I could get into and just lose hours and not a care in the world because all I'm doing is playing the game and or pressing the buttons or watching the screen or whatever it was and having that hope like oh the next big win is coming. And I think uniquely with gambling there's a couple things that I would compare to some of my drug use where like there wasn't like no one knew. Like it's really really easy to
Yeah.
hide it. Like I wasn't sharing my money with anyone but my son, and my son, I mean, he wasn't looking at bank accounts and paying bills. There was no one that had any clue. They can't smell it, they can't see it. Physically, there's no real impact on my appearance. So there's not this obvious sign to the people who love and care about you that something's wrong, which allows you to keep that addiction alive and keep feeding it without anyone questioning what's going on until you get to the point where maybe you're so far that you begin to borrow money from people when you earn enough that maybe you wouldn't typically need to be asking to borrow money, or you're late paying bills, or you start selling things that matter to you. Like those are the things other people then might see, like, hey, what happened to that thing you had? Or
Yeah.
like, oh, I hawked it, or why am I, a friend questioning, why in the world do you need to borrow money from me? You make more than me. What's going on? And then the lies begun. And that's where the protection of the addiction came in, where I think for people with substance or alcohol, people start questioning, a bit more around like, you look drunk a lot, or you the last 3 weekends in a row you couldn't stand up, or you got in fights, or you blacked out. It's much easier for people to see the symptoms of those addictions and maybe intervene. Where I think with this addiction, it's just harder for people to intervene because it's so easy to keep it a secret.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. What got you into gambling in the first place?
This is
Because I
probably
know there's always like a
yeah.
starting point. There's
Oh,
always a
always,
nexus.
always, always. One of the men I loved most in my life taught me how to gamble. My grandfather, when I was like 5 or 6 years old, used to take me with him to the VFW to play poker with his war buddies. He
Nice.
taught me blackjack. He played football numbers. He played pull tabs and let me pull the cardboard off. I was introduced to gambling at a really, really young age. And so I think there was some ego part of, especially poker, blackjack. Like I was often, one of the only women at the table, if not the only woman at the table, and scooping a pot. There was a bit of this ego, like, oh, you thought I couldn't play, but I know,
Hmm.
oh, you're trying to tell me which card beats my cards. Like, I know the rules, like there was some ego, I think, big shotism that came from those games. But that introduction to gambling with my my grandfather, I think later, right, when I was playing the games, when I was engaging in it, it almost felt like this connection to him. And I would say the same is true for the slot machines and my grandmother. Um, but yeah, introduced at a really, really young age, always thought of it as just like a thing people did for fun.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's how I was with alcohol, right? Because, with the exception, like, I didn't drink with my dad, but I seen him drunk all the time, and I made
Yeah.
that promise to myself. Like, I made 3 promises to myself, and if you haven't seen my podcast, there's a lot of times that I reference this, and I say I made 3 lies to myself, 3 promises that I lied to myself. I'd never drink, never smoke, and never do a drug. And by the age of 18, I had broken all of them.
Me too.
Yeah,
Same. Yeah. I
yeah,
was in an
we,
alcoholic household. I was around smokers. I mean, I remember being like 13 and complaining to my parents that they needed to not smoke in the car and quit smoking in the house. And I was counting their beers and really concerned about their behavior. And I'd made those promises to myself, and I broke those promises before 18 too.
yeah, yeah,
Before
and
16, really.
yeah, yeah, definitely. But those things, those nexus moments that really introduce us into those things can either demonize those things or glorify them. And so this is a good perspective because it kind of glorified it for you, it demonized it for me in a way, in my addiction and stuff like that. The next question is, at what point did you look at your situation and the depths, and you're like, holy shit, it's come
Yeah.
this far?
Yeah. I'd say there were a few times that that happened in my life, but the holy shit, it's come this far. I need help. And like, I'm going to actually raise my hand for help was that moment I described to you where it was like thoughts of suicide. There was a
Yeah.
literal thought that was, I'm worth more dead than alive. There was an imagining of leaving the parking lot one night when I had a big loss of, just flooring it and launching the car into the lake across the street. Um, the last night that I placed a bet, I was sitting at this machine playing. I'd been at the casino for hours, and I was out of money. Like didn't have any more accessible credit. I had cashed out my 401k. That day, I spent my entire paycheck for in a matter of hours, and I didn't want to go home. And the casino has that particular casino has free play that shows up around a certain time every night, around midnight or 1 a.m. I forget. It's been almost it's been over 6 years now. I forget. It's a good thing I forget because I used to know that time.
Yeah.
Um, and so I walked around and like just had the free beverages and listened to the music. And I walked around like for hours without placing a single bet because I had no money, waiting for that time to hit. And it was a small amount of free play. It was like $5. And so I took this $5 and I went to a nickel Keno machine and I was playing one nickel at a time, thinking that that one nickel at a time was going to be enough to get me back to good,
Yeah.
whatever, for the day, not even thinking about any of the prior losses. And I'm sitting there and I have this like flashback moment where I remember encountering this woman another time at the casino, like early on. And I this relationship with the casino, right? On again, off again. And this time around it had been several years, but at the beginning of this several years, one of my first nights gambling where I was having a lot of fun and kind of pulled my first all-nighter in a long time. And I encountered this woman on the way out the door, and the door is the doorway to this shuttle that goes from one casino to another that's like a block away. And I'm going there, and it's like 4 or 5 in the morning. And she's standing there, and she looks at me, and she says, "Hey, is there any way you could help me? I took the bus here because the casino just buses people there for free. I took the bus here and I missed the last one. I've spent my whole paycheck. I have no way to get home, and I have to be to work in the morning in like a half hour. I don't have money for a taxi. And I don't remember if I helped her or not. I remember judging her. I remember thinking, who the hell would spend their whole paycheck? Who would end up with no way to get home? Who would do that to themselves? And here I was, down to my last, not even my own money. I had nothing left that I can pull out of any of my resources, not just a single paycheck, but paycheck after paycheck after paycheck. And I'm like, fuck, I'm her.
Yeah.
I'm that girl. I'm that girl. I said, who would do that? She's got a problem. I have a problem. And I have no idea how I actually stopped myself from continuing to press the button, but I pulled out the $2 that I needed to put in the car to get home because my car was in the parking lot with not even a gallon of gas left in it. So that was the day that I decided to get help. And I texted a friend as I left and I said, I'm such an idiot. That was the whole text. I'm such an idiot.
I remember being, you talked about judging, judging people.
Oh, yeah.
I remember being that person too, right? Right at the beginning of my active addiction. In the military, when you're in the army and you see people get in trouble for DUIs or alcohol related incidents, the culture is judge them, right? Because they're a piece of shit. They've made a mistake. And I used to be that person where I was like, I can't fucking believe this person let it get this far, this bad,
Yeah, I'm
And
not that bad.
I'm not that bad. But somebody said something to me and it really rung true with me. And it was, I always used to live in the not yet,
Yeah.
right? I'm not that bad yet.
Yeah.
I'm not that far gone yet. And so when I got to that reality, just like you, when I got to that point, I was like, holy shit, I am all those people that I judged,
Yep.
And it's weird because like that's a weird parallel for my life because I've kind of judged people silently my whole life. Somebody gets injured, oh, they're a piece of shit because they can't continue to do their job. Well, I took a knee injury and I couldn't do my job, and so like it's weird how we start drawing these parallels when we get to that point, that absolute point when we say, okay, enough is enough, it's over.
Yeah.
What were some of the effects that gambling had on people around you? Because our addiction doesn't just affect us, it affects everybody around us.
Yeah. And I'm working through some of this right now with my son. I have a son who's 24. My worst years of gambling were his junior and senior year in high school. And I'm realizing now, like, there's a lot of parenting I didn't do. There's a lot of like basic adulting 101 conversations that were not had in our household that I'm seeing he could use help with now. And kind of going back and saying, hey, can I reparent you here? Because I
Yeah.
think I really messed this up. Like, can I fix this and like help you with, this is what daily discipline looks like. This is what monthly bill pay cycles should look like. This is how you budget. This is how you make a dang doctor's appointment. I think there's a lot that affected my son in terms of my willingness to let him go do whatever it was he wanted. Because if he said, Mom, can I go with so and so to do this thing? I'm like, yeah, go have fun. A lot of freedom for him and not a lot of structure. Because I was like, oh, he can go do that. I can go feed my addiction.
Yeah.
And of course, at the time, I wasn't calling it an addiction. Like, oh, I can go, I can go let loose at the casino. I can go let off some steam. I can go do the thing I enjoy. And so I'd say he was absolutely most affected. Um, and then, of course, the message to him around, like, can we sorry, I can't afford that. Sorry, I can't afford, which was just baloney. Like, had I not been gambling, we could have afforded a lot of the things that he had asked for. And not that you should give your kids everything, but like, can I get, whatever, private coaching sessions for pitching? Like, he's a baseball player. We can't afford it.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, I spent probably, a month of coaching lessons and a night.
Yeah. Yeah.
lying, and then I would say my friends and my immediate family also really affected in the sense that I was pretending that everything was fine. I was pretending that I was okay. I was pretending that I had it all together. I was pretending that I wasn't in a lot of emotional pain. I mean, I was too people. And that's something I've really come to know in my recovery is that all of those things I was hiding was just creating more guilt, more shame, more sense of not belonging because I wasn't sharing myself with the world
Yeah.
or even being honest with myself about how I felt or admitting like I'm in pain right now. And all the different ways the pain was showing up. I don't love my job. I feel like I'm letting down my family. Like all of that I wasn't being honest about was a lot of what drove me back to the casino over and over and over again, never grieving. I've had a lot of significant losses in my life, and I was never taught how to grieve. And I never wanted to admit that I needed to grieve because I was trying to live up to this statements that the world around me was making. You're so strong, you're so brave, I can't believe you do this, you're such a you know single moms are heroes, not single moms need help, single moms are
Yeah.
heroes, right? Like,
Yeah.
well, let me put on the cape. I got to be your hero. I got to get it all right. I got to have the career. I got to take care of the kid. I got to and just trying to do all of that and live up to that independent, brave, strong woman persona that was built for me, maybe,
Yeah.
instead of admitting, hey, I'm a human who needs help. I'm not a freaking superhero. I'm not super brave. I'm falling apart inside. I miss my mom. I miss my dad. I miss my grandma, all of it.
Yeah. 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 When we get into those points in our life where we start to really struggle and we don't know how to cope with those things, constructively,
Yeah.
those negative coping mechanisms turn into these positive ones all of a sudden, just out of nowhere. Like that's gonna feed me and make me feel a little bit better. Why not? Fuck it.
Yeah. It was modeled to me. You had a bad day, you had a beer.
Yeah.
You got to do something to make yourself feel better, but that something was never like sit with your feelings.
Yeah. Exactly.
It
Exactly.
was
Yeah.
never talk about it.
Yeah, my dad would go on the road. He was a truck driver. He'd go on the road, come home. He'd be like, if he was in a bad mood, a beer and a line, and you're good. And so that's what I knew. Like I demonized it, but then like when I grew up, that became my comfort zone. I
Right,
had a
because
bad,
back here, that's what you learned
yeah,
subconsciously.
yeah. I had a bad day, have a beer. I had a good day, have a beer. Somebody pissed me off, have a beer. Somebody complimented me, so we'll do a shot for that. You know
And
what I
that's
mean?
a big one. You
That's
gotta
a big one.
celebrate the
Somebody,
compliment.
yes, somebody complimented me, and
Yeah.
uh, and I recently seen something on TikTok, and I do a lot of interaction on TikTok. That's kind of my platform, and somebody said it's my birthday. Everybody shotgun a beer with me, and it took everything in me not to be like that is completely unhealthy, my friend, and you're walking down the wrong path. But I can't judge somebody. I can't put that out there. And even there's a big creator that said like told him that's very unhealthy for you, and he's in recovery too,
Mhm.
and he's a celebrity. And I was like, this man is coming out and saying that. Like, thank you for saying that, and I don't have the nerve to say that to somebody. What was so getting into your recovery? What did your recovery look like when you first started getting into it? Did you dive headfirst into it, or did you kind of gradually put your foot in the water?
Um, I gradually put my foot in the water. I think we all have different definitions. So when you say dive right in, I'm picturing the person who's going to multiple meetings for lots of days in a row. I did that for 5 days.
It became a
I
lot.
well, for 5 whole days, I went to meetings. Like that's not like a lot of people do 90 meetings in 90 days. I did a meeting a day for 5 days.
Yeah.
My I the first thing I did was call my brother and say I had a problem, and he asked me what the plan was. And I'm really in the kind of life that we've led, like pretty likely we've encountered at least one person who went to some form of rehab or a program of some sort. And so I had people in my life who had been through 12-step recovery for other things. So I knew 12-step was available. So I curiously like, is there 12-step for gambling? And sure enough, there was. And in my state, there were meetings regionally available to me every day of the week. And so the plan I made was I'm going to go to a meeting a day um, until I don't want to do that. and I'm going to see if that helps. And my second meeting um, was really my first meeting was like not a great experience. It
Yeah.
was me and two other people. Um, they were both men. They said that I could still gamble,
Well,
which I mean, I can see now, like, hey, harm reduction works for some people. It actually, like, maybe that was possible. But at that moment, I was like, I'm here because I never want to gamble again. Or let's be real honest, I was there because I wanted to learn how to gamble like a normal person. I wanted to
yeah.
go back to the girl who could just go a couple times a year with her girlfriends and have some fun, right?
Yeah.
No, not I've come to understand that I'm just somebody that that's not possible for. But they suggested like, oh, this meeting has a lot of women at it. Like you should go to this one. And they were right. So I go to the second meeting I go to. Turns out that is that's my home meeting. I still do 12-step recovery today. Um, those stories of the truth of how devastating and destructive this addiction was in other people's lives had me squarely facing the reality of how far I'd already gone down and actively choosing, like, I don't want to ever tell that story. So one of the first testimonies I heard was from a woman who had ended up, homeless, living in her car, suicidal after having a really great life. And I knew that that wasn't the future that I wanted. And I knew that she had been without gambling, coming to these meetings, got a sponsor, so I was like, what did she do? Like,
Yeah.
what did she do to get as far as she's gotten? And I just started listening. I put in the protections that I needed to stop myself from having access to money. That was kind of one of the most critical first steps, was to cut off supply. Because I was a casino gambler, supply was cash. It could have been credit cards too. So I trusted a family member to hold on to all my cash. And the only way that I could spend money was prepaid debit cards specific to places where I shopped. So prepaid gas card, prepaid grocery card. I had zero access to cash. I was out of things to sell. And I did not have my own debit card. I did not have my ID. There was no way I could show up at the bank and ask for my own money. And that stayed in place for about 60 days. And I got a temporary sponsor. I started working the steps, and that was in the beginning helpful in kind of interrupting the pattern of betting and me beginning to believe that I could have a life without gambling.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, I'm happy. I'm happy for you. I really am. So is the 12-step program that you're in, is that kind of like NA and AA in the
Yep.
sense of, oh,
Change a
okay.
few words.
Yeah, okay. So
Yep.
I was gonna say that because if I don't know if I'm pretty sure you've looked at the big book, but the big book, you can take out alcoholic and alcohol and replace it with anything, and that's the beauty of the big book, is it's life 101.
Yeah.
And so that's really what started helping me out and getting to that point. Was there like when you first got into recovery and first started working your program, was there like points where it was like really fucking hard for you,
Yeah.
where you were like, what was that like, and how did you work through that?
So, I mean, there's been those moments in every part of the program, and they still happen today. So I'm not going to pretend that we don't have hard days
Yeah.
as people in recovery, because we
Yeah.
have them. We just have tools to deal with them in a way we never did before. Um, I didn't have any problem admitting that I was powerless. I had problems with the word powerless.
Yeah. I can stop it now.
I was like powerless because there was a lot of power in other areas of my life. Like I'm running a household, I have an executive career in a large organization. Like there's a lot of places I had quote unquote power in my life. So I really had to like look squarely at like gambling, power over this thing, right?
Yeah, it's the
So that
control.
was yeah. And then I think in progressing forward, and you're right, you're hitting there was the power greater than me. I didn't struggle to like I already had a belief in a power greater than me. What I really struggled with in the beginning was actually believing that I am going to tear up, because every time I think about how I really felt emotionally, it's like it just hits me again. Um, Coming to believe that I was worthy of that restoration,
Yeah.
that this higher power who had not answered the prayers to keep my mom alive, who had allowed me to be the one to find my stepdad dead, who had in my mind at that time over and over showed me that like I wasn't worthy of answering prayers for.
Yeah.
And again, that was my mind at the time. Um, that was really hard to actually believe that this higher power, which today I call God, but I have some days I'll call it universe and some days I'll call it nature, and I don't care what we call it. I happen to call it God, but I believe in a lot of different possibilities. I I really struggled to think that I was going to be worthy of the time and attention to be restored, that maybe that higher power was, had seen me as hopeless.
Yeah.
And so that was part of it. And then the other part of it was, I mean, certainly, like I said, every step kind of has some hard parts.
Yeah.
I think also the surrendering control, the complete saying, you know what, I'm in charge of nothing.
Yeah.
I got it. What?
Yeah.
What do you want?
Yeah.
What do you want from me? And how do I get out of my own way to answer what that is, and actually find that thing that I'm supposed to be doing, because I thought I was supposed to be doing all these things, and I was trying to be in charge of it all. So if I turn that over, I'm terrified of what's going to happen. So the turnover, and I still try to pull my control back on stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
And then um facing my, you know, for those who aren't working 12-step recovery, that fourth step for me was tough. Like sitting down and writing it all out, it was just not something I could do. And I'm so grateful to have had a sponsor at the time that was like, oh gosh, why do you think you have to sit down, lock yourself in a room and write it all down in a few hours? Like, take your sweet time. Like,
Yeah.
let one resentment pop at a time, one fear pop, just jot it down. Like, you don't have to do this all at once, because some of this stuff was so deep. My anger at my higher power was real big.
Yeah.
And my disappointment, right? And the same about myself, my anger at myself. Like, I should know better. There was just so much there to pull out from inside of me, and like let the sadness come, let the frustration come, look at the root of that thing that I was so upset about, what my part was in it, like not wanting to admit that. And then in my program, they make you do a financial inventory.
Mm.
I think all of them should do this, but this is one of the things. It's like moral. Okay, that's great. That's hard.
Yeah.
Now I got to do a financial inventory too, and like look at how I've spent money, treated money my whole life, my relationship with money, past, present, and what I'm thinking about the potential of future of money, my thoughts about money, like that was really hard to go like line by line. And I had some external force. It was like, okay, I started to believe in this higher power thing actually gonna show up for me. All of a sudden, some federal entity comes and is like, hey, we're not sure this is true, so we need some documentation. So it was almost like I was forced to do this financial inventory because I had a deadline. So those are those are the biggest things, though. I think just learn, really that all of the admission of all the things, that was probably all the things I just mentioned, or they were all hard, but they were all guided and supported with love and help and compassion and understanding and kindness and similarity with all the other people who'd walked this path before me and had what I was looking for, that freedom, that happiness, that joy. Like, oh, their car broke down and you lost your job and you're here, you're laughing. What do you do? Why are you laughing? How are you
Yeah.
happy?
Yeah.
Shouldn't you be telling me the world is ending right now? Just
Yeah.
always content and at peace with life. I wanted that.
Yeah. Yeah. I can definitely relate to the higher power thing. My higher power that I call Odin. Um, Definitely, I struggled with that too. Like, hard because my whole life, like, in the culture of Viking, Norse, pagan, it's very much broad, beefy, like, that's the culture, like, fuck with us, you'll find out, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
But that's not who I am. And my thing was, like, why was I not made like everybody else? I want to be normal. And why did you, my my creator, the person that I identify as creator, why did you look at me and essentially give me the middle finger at birth, you know,
Yeah.
and set me up in this life full of torture and misery and self abuse. And every time that I said I need help, you didn't help me. And then I came to realize that it's not about this God shot of, here, I'm going to give you what you need. It's I'm going, or I'm going to provide a way for you to get what you need. It's you're going to go through this and you're going to figure out this life, and you're going to go through the pain that you have to go to get on the other side to be good enough for yourself and for other people.
Yeah.
And so that when I got to that realization, I was like, my whole life has been a lie, right? And that was so beautiful. But also the control portion, right? You talked about control and about I control everything around me. Control was a big thing for me, absolute big thing. I thought that I had control over how much I drank, and I didn't. I thought I had control over, other people. I thought I had control over myself. And I had no control over anything. Literally, the only thing that I can control, and I've said this before, was my hair. Right? I can control if I have facial hair or if I don't.
Hmm.
And so I don't have control over any of that. And once I relinquished that control and I said, all right, I don't have it, opportunities came rushing in, and that is the most beautiful thing, right? And I started living in this moment, and I think that you can relate, or you might be able to relate to this, where as long as it enriched my recovery, I didn't say no.
I can absolutely relate to that.
you know
Yeah. Yeah.
it's and those are the beautiful points that we get to in our life, is like when it starts enriching your recovery and enriching your life, you get to that point where you're like, okay, I'll
That
do it.
second piece too, right? Like it's not just enriching your recovery. Like when your recovery is enriched, your whole life is
Hmm.
enriched. I mean, when I started to strip away these masks that I had created to shape and control the perception other people had of me,
Yeah.
I I started to know myself and I started to appreciate the things that I used to beat myself up about. I started to become free of this self-loathing and start to take on, like, when I made a mistake, like, "Oh, that happened. What am I gonna do different?" And I started to unlock this desire to have a better life. And I don't just mean free from addiction. I mean like to unleash whatever God was calling me to do, or my higher power was calling me to do, and learning to listen to that, and then not, this is a whole nother trip, right? And then not second guess it, and not doubt yourself, and believe like this is you're supposed to do this. This is why you got the idea. Your ideas are intended to be like a message
Yeah.
that you are able and capable and deserving of being the creator of the thing you have the idea for. Oh my gosh, like getting out of my own way. Like there's just so much that comes with that second part, right? The rest, enrich my recovery and the rest of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
and the reason why I started all this is because, like, the podcast is because people started putting seeds down, right? So somebody said, "Oh, you're in recovery, and you can carry on a conversation. You should do a podcast." And I was like, "I should do a podcast. I think that would be cool." But then I was like, I don't know, right? So I started putting up these barriers, these barricades where like
Yeah.
you're not gonna be able to get past it. Then I have a friend who was like, "Hey man, you should come on my podcast. We'll talk spirituality." And I was like, "All right, fine. I can talk to people, whatever." And then I realized how much fun I had in it, and so that ushered in, the next portion of it. Then the final ceiling portion was I was making excuses. I was like, "I don't have equipment. I don't have the software." And he's like, "Dude, it's easy." And I was like,
I don't have bumper music. I don't have an intro. I don't have an outro. I don't have guests.
yeah, yeah. I have a dingy little microphone that I was gonna use, and he was like, "Use it until you can get a better one." And I was like,
Oh, I have like a little blue snowball because that was all
"The
like,
ball one, I have that one too."
that was my
Well,
first one.
not now. I have a
Not
Yeti,
now
but
either, right? That was my first one. And all my first episodes are like, I think that's why I was like, are you sure it's not echoey? 'Cause my first episodes are really echoey with, it's not awful sound quality, but yep,
yep.
it's so relatable.
Yeah, and so this enriches my life and enriches my recovery. I thoroughly enjoy talking to people, and I've done an episode by myself, but I enjoy talking to other people because it enriches me, it enriches you, it enriches everybody around us.
Yeah.
Everybody that listens. So I am grateful for you being here today. I just want to get that out of the way. Okay, so in your recovery now, what does your recovery look like, and how are you maintaining your program?
Yeah, I now, so I talked about kind of waking up that, oh, I got big dreams now. Like all of a sudden, I began to see my ideas as gifts. And like, how do I unwrap these gifts, and how do I start to act on this? And how do I actually not talk myself out of these things?
Yeah.
How do I not focus on the obstacles? And so, um, about a year and a half into my recovery, my son and I were having a conversation, and he's like, haven't you always wanted to own your own recruiting company? And my professional career, I was in recruiting, talent acquisition for years and years, some of the world's largest companies, leading teams, doing strategy. And I was like, yeah, I have. I have always wanted that. He's like, what's stopping you? I'm going to college, da, da, da. And I'm like, oh gosh, fresh out of excuses now. He's like, you can't say it's me. You can't say it's me. Because I
But
started to go like, well, I'm helping you with tuition, and like I had a good paying job, it was consistent income, good benefits, I had all these excuses. And he's like, you said you just want me to be happy. Like, what about you? What's stopping you from doing what you want? And so that kind of like lit it up even more than it was like, it was already starting to wake up. I was like, I don't think this corporate stuff's for me. Anyhow, I could talk for a long time about that moment. So I decided to start my first business. And then about a year into business, and I'm starting to like just not be consistent with my selling, not following through. And I land a big client, and I kind of put a lot of effort and money into this. Um, but I'm noticing that I'm just not like I'm not following through. And so I hired a coach. And then I have a couple big wins and I land this big client and things are going good and I got momentum going again. And then a major external market factor happens that is a law that's passed that greatly affects my clients, and every penny of anticipated revenue gone overnight. I'd been working with this coach. That was all the money I thought I had coming, and I had invested. And I don't see this the same as gambling. Some people in my recovery community had looked at entrepreneurship as maybe a gamble. I see this as me going after my goals, right? So
Yeah.
I had invested dollars in my business.
Yeah.
And now I'm like working with this coach. And one of the things she was helping me do was get more consistent with selling, that I just wasn't, I still working with her, wasn't following through, and lose this client. And suddenly it's like this moment of, I'm going to be like, I'm not going to be able to pay my rent, like quite literally wasn't going
Yeah.
to be able to pay my rent because of a mistake I made in not putting a certain thing in the contract, la, 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 lesson learned. She challenges me a little bit and says, what is, what is it that you're doing with your time when you're not selling? And what I was doing was I was giving free career coaching, free resume advice, free interview advice, turning down money for coaching, turning down money for career coaching. And she said, I think maybe you want to be a coach, not a recruiter. And I I said, okay, I am going to just sit with myself. I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to pay my bills. And I don't care how, I'm committed. I'm committed to staying self-employed. I don't care what this failure looks like. I'm committed. Like, obviously this isn't the path for me because I'm not following through on my own goals. So I got therapy, coaching, and 12-step recovery all in place as tools in my recovery. Therapy helps me kind of unpack some of the really old stuff that maybe I hit a block in my healing, or I keep having a flashback. That's something related. Undiagnosed PTSD, but I think that might be what's going on there. So if I hit something that seems like a trauma block, I'll plug therapy in, right? If I need someone to mirror back my thinking to me or play something out with me, I might lean on coaching. If I need to stay present and grounded and I just do this is my medicine, I do my 12-step, which when I say 12-step, I mean working the steps, sitting to do them with a sponsor, going to meetings and having sponsees and getting involved in my inner group. So that's how I work a program of recovery today, is I kind of plug in the tools I need, but the one thing that's always present is the 12-step recovery. And I'd say the coaching too, because I've now learned how to coach myself by creating my own coaching program after working with a coach for so long. And that's really more like mindset and emotional awareness and building, emotional intimacy, learning how to listen to your higher self, your inner guidance, your higher power, and trust it and believe in it. And so now I'm a podcast host, I'm a life coach, I'm building a community of women, supporting women to go after their dreams so that more people knows what this feels like, to act on your ideas, to set goals, to achieve them, and to do so coming from a place of purity motivation, not purity in the sense of like sexual purity, but like your intentions. I've gone after big goals in the past, but my intentions were really self-serving and really greedy and all about me. And like, none of this is about me anymore. This is about the greater good and serving humanity and helping like lift others up and help other people clear obstacles.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're a very, very busy woman.
Well, that's because you just happen to catch me at a time where I'm like launching this new thing, and then I guess still trying to keep the podcast going. And I've created some big goals for myself.
Yeah. Well, you're achieving them, and that's amazing.
Yeah. It is. I think you're doing it too, and it's great to see, you show up bravely on a strange Facebook community and be like, "Hey, I need people." Like this is like you need people. Yeah, you need people. I need people
It's
too. Like we got to go
it,
find them.
it's very scary, you know. One of the things that really plagued me when I first started doing this and kind of resurfaced lately is the fear of rejection, right? The fear of like I'm not big enough for you to be on my show, but I'm not small enough for a certain amount of people, right? So it's like, but for me, it's not about the numbers. It's not about the likes, the views. It's about the message, the content
Yep.
of what is being produced
Me
or
too.
put out there, because people need to know that they're not alone.
Yeah. That's why
And,
my
and it,
podcast exists too. I mean, do I want to sell coaching to people? Sure. But if somebody's active in addiction, I don't like coaching's not necessarily the right modality for them.
no,
I think they might need other support. Coaching is better suited like once you kind of got your stability and you're ready for that
yeah,
leapfrog.
yeah,
It's the podcast, though, for me, it's about showcasing those stories of radical transformation. I mean, my goodness, how many people have you had on your show that are like, well, now like me, like I'm an independent business owner. I've had successful multiple years in a row. I'm actively paying my taxes. I'm not gambling. Not only did I quit gambling, I also quit drinking. I also quit smoking recreational marijuana. Why? Because I want to be the best version of myself possible. None of that possible
yeah,
without recovery. I've had so many business owners, people who are felons that now have both degrees and LLCs. Like it's these stories, like there's so much possible when
yeah.
we find recovery. And like, Sean, this is just the beginning.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. You know, I have people that say, "Oh, you might be able to." No, I'm not gonna ever be able to drink again, and I know that, and I'm okay with it. You know,
Yeah.
because I know that if I do that from the first drink, I'm done and I'm fucked, and that's everything that I've worked on, everything in my life. I
Yeah.
will not be able to do if I'm not sober, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Like
not going to
this
be a,
matters too much to you now.
yeah, yeah. You know, I won't be able to work with the nonprofit that I work with.
Mhm.
I won't be able to work with the participants in the veterans community or the veterans therapeutic court. I won't be able to do the podcast because of it. I could mask it and be like, oh, it's fine because I run it typically in the morning. But the reality is I would be lying to myself and lying to everybody else,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and it's just not worth it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just that moment when you choose to live
Yeah.
that I think really helps. And I want to touch on just real quick regular relapsing. Like that's for some people, I don't even like the word relapse, slip, whatever we want to call it. Like I just if somebody out there is listening and maybe they've gambled or they've drank or they've smoked and they didn't want to and they did it again and like you're thinking you lost your clean time, like you didn't lose it. You didn't lose the knowledge, you didn't lose the tools. Everybody's still there, willing to support you. And I think Sean and I both know, Sean, I obviously don't want to speak for you, but I would say we both know that we're just a single decision away from no longer being in recovery.
Absolutely.
And that we can both be here today and tell you how committed we are, but we both know if we don't practice these tools and we don't use what's been working, if we stop doing that, there's a really high risk we go back. And if we go back, we know we can walk back into our resources for support and pick right back up where we left off. And so can you.
Abs- Absolutely, absolutely. Just because you have a slip, one of my issues with with the recovery community that I see is people say, "Oh, relapse is not a part of recovery." Well, it actually is, right?
I think for some, yeah. I mean, relapse is part of many people's stories.
Yeah,
So if someone has a slip, the last thing they want to hear is, "You're not in recovery." Like
yeah,
what do you mean? Like, didn't we all? I mean, how many slips did I have when I was trying to quit on my own? I can't even count.
yeah, yeah. I've had periods of sobriety where I've gone 4 and 5. Well, not 4 and 5, but like that's an outlandish number. Like 2 and 3 years sober, but I wasn't working a program, and I was like, I got this shit on my own, and I can do it on my own, and I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't. There's absolutely nothing that I can do on my own without support of a community and without a program. And so yeah, absolutely. You're 100% correct. You know, if you do go back out and you say, "Man, I do need some help," you come right back to the rooms. Nobody's going to judge you because we've all been there.
Yeah. And we still love you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's going to be no hate, no animosity. Um, so before I close the show, I would like to ask if you have any suggestions or anything for somebody that's struggling or early in their recovery and they're like, I don't know if this is for me. What would you give them?
If they were saying, I don't know if this is for me, I would give them, you're not going to know unless you actually try it. Like if you don't try the things, and sometimes it takes repeated tries, you're not going to know if it's going to work for you. So don't assume that it's not going to work for you without trying it. That's like failing ahead of time. And you're opting out of even giving it your best effort. So I would say try and try all the things. Like you go to meetings and meetings aren't for you. Okay, try therapy. You go to therapy. Therapy's not for you. Okay, try meditation. It doesn't work for you. I don't try spinning around in circles 100 times in a row. Like just keep trying because eventually you will find what works for you. And don't stop pursuing your goals for freedom from whatever it is that you feel trapped in, because I promise you there is somebody out there who's willing to help you. There's a method out there that will work for you. I know people who have recovered alone in the woods in a hut. I know people who have recovered doing dances around fires. I know people who've recovered with 12 steps. I know people who've recovered in therapy, inpatient, outpatient. There's so many ways that you can attempt. And until you've attempted everything, do not give up on yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of meditation, I never thought I would like meditation. It is my favorite part of the day. I get to be with me and myself and nothing else.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Yeah. It's me, myself, and my higher power. I have a friend in my program who says that prayer is talking to your higher power and meditation is listening.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You'll get some crazy messages if you just stop talking.
And turn off the noise or listen to the noise. Actually, it's like for me, it's listening to that noise. It's like what's swirling around in there and sorting out like reality from what might actually be a really important thing for me to look at in my head.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Tara, I want to thank you for being here and thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you.
Thank you for choosing to live another day. It's weird that you said that earlier because I made a video on TikTok saying thank you for choosing to live another day. I was like, that is a weird coincidence that's happened. But I want to thank you for everything that you do, not just for yourself and for your son, but also for your community. It's a very, very courageous thing that you're doing, and really hard work. And so you're doing amazing work, and continue what you're doing, and I'm always here.
Right back at you, man. You're doing great work too. Keep spreading the hope.
Absolutely. Well, everybody, thank you guys for sitting with us for this hour. I do appreciate you guys. And until next time, we'll see you later.